more likely to come after a recreational facility than they are a medical facility. I mean, there's a lot of things that we've discussed. And as this industry has moved along, it literally moves in dog years. Wouldn't you agree? 7 years to one, with the things that happen in it. So as we're here together, we need to focus on how we can get the industry to work together as a whole for the greater good of this entire process, because this is not an easy process, and we do have people who, you know, legitimately, like Smarter Colorado, people who really don't agree with it, and they put up good arguments. So, you know, there's a lot of things that the voters and even, you know, the committees, the legislative staff that are really torn on, you know, what is best for society. At one point, they think the voters voted for a tax because they wanted to see these schools different, they wanted to see a change. So can we make that change happen without overtaxing the industry? And I know now we're talking about changing the medical marijuana tax, you know, to meet recreational. So would that be better for somebody to actually go recreational or not? So those are the questions that we have. We want to thank our sponsors today, BioTrack THC. Amazing tracking software. If you're in the business, you should definitely check them out at biotrackthc.com. We have the Cash Hyde Foundation. We have Cannabis Business Association, Cloverleaf University, and Cloverleaf Consulting. And of course, we would like to thank Casselman for hosting our event tonight. So, we have an amazing panel here tonight, and I didn't ever have them in order, and I need to plan this better. But I'm going to just introduce you, and then we'll let you guys tell like a little bit about yourselves, so that you know what your bios. Cool. So we have Sean Hauser, an attorney for Vicente Cederberg here in Denver.
Hi, Sean, I work for Vicente Cederberg, and I'm
Pull it down a little bit.
short, so I'm also working with Sensible Colorado, working on the local implementation of Amendment 64, which is...
Yes. There we go. We don't want to hear your face.
We need to hear Sean. She's wonderful. Yeah.
Better? Can you hear? Okay. Then we have TJ. I don't know how to pronounce your last name.
It's Lawrence.
And he is representing the union, which is amazing because we actually have the UFCW here, you know, who are trying to create legitimate unions for the industry and jobs, and that's just a big benefit to us as far as putting workers on the floor and lobbying and really pushing the movement forward. So we really want to thank him for being here today. We also have Robert Corey. You know Rob. He's pretty much alone has taken more marijuana back from the state than every attorney put together in this state. So Rob just does what he wants. If he decides he wants to speak, if he doesn't, he shows up. He pretty much runs the show. So we're really glad he showed up tonight, though.
Thank you. I've mellowed out a little bit lately, though.
Yeah, right. We also have Samantha Walsh. Samantha Walsh is a lobbyist here for a lot of you business owners who are out there who are looking for representation, and in your small communities, you don't know exactly how to get, you know, your city council members, people to listen to you. There are some lobbyists here. So those are the type of people that you're going to want to talk to about representing your personal interests and helping you out fight those battles in your own hometowns. So thanks for being here.
Thanks, Chloe.
Then we have Craig Small. Are you doing the task force again?
No, not in this room.
Okay, so he was on the previous task force, so he's lucky he gets a rest. But he's an attorney here in Colorado, and he's also on the board of Normal. We have Terry Robnett. She is a lobbyist as well. So if you're looking for representation, she's another person that you can talk to. She also will be sitting on the task force here during this next set of rules with the Department of Revenue and this implementation of regulated marijuana. And she also owns Cannabis Patients Network, Action Network. So if you're a patient and you're kind of wondering what's going to happen to patients, she's a great person to talk to for that as well. Thank you. And then, is there somebody next to you? Oh, Sean? Okay, good. I get in that.
He doesn't want to sit
you
next
that. Sean Coleman. Sean Coleman is from Washington, D.C. He's worked with Jared Polis, actually on his staff. He is a master of cannabis policy, and he's also a lobbyist here representing businesses and very involved in various aspects of the business. His bio is amazing. He also went to Juilliard, which was my dream. So that's always awesome. Thanks for being here. And then we have the infamous twirling hippie, Jessica LaRoe. Yeah! It's so funny that I think she said something to me when I asked her about that people didn't realize what she was in her previous life. And it was funny because when I met her at the Capitol, which is where I met her, she was throwing numbers out at me so fast. She's probably the one person who just really shut me up. And she has a stockbroker background, and super smart, and one of the, I would say, main cannabis advocates that sits out on the task force. And I know she's going to sit on the task force this session as well to help us write the rules. So thanks for being here tonight. Hi, Bill. This is Wayward Bill.
Praise God.
All right, so let's get started. We're going to discuss some issues that we have going on today. Working groups. So, we're going to have 5 total working groups, is that correct?
Yes.
Somebody want to explain working groups, or would they like me to?
Which one are you looking at? We should probably have somebody
It's all going to be sitting on the group.
like Jessica.
Well, we've had 2 meetings so far, and yesterday's meeting, well, you want me to explain what they are? Okay, so the work...
No, basically, explain to them how the process is going to work first, and then we'll get into like the logistics of it. Like, there's 5 work groups, correct?
Yeah, there are 5 working groups. Each one is headed by a different member of the MED, so they're just the medical has been dropped from the name. And each working group is sort of tackling different portions of 1317 and 258, the bills that were written to legislate the constitutional amendments. So the first working group was really dealing with transportation and eligibility for transferring your license and how exactly you would do the transfer. So that's going to be a lot of what we can talk about today. And then the working group... What?
Badges.
Badges, exactly. So occupational eligibility, ownership eligibility, what you will have to prove from your existing business to transfer, and what different hoops you'll have to jump through. I will say that yesterday's meeting was an exercise in not being quite prepared. Today's working group meeting, it seemed like everyone was really prepared, so we didn't get quite as much done because we knew what we were talking about.
A lot more banter today.
I don't know that we accomplished anything more than the other one, but the other, it seems like more members.
Today's group was Jessica's group, so
Well, at
you
least we
can
had you on
imagine the
there.
banter.
Well, at least I brought topics up that they could think about, so somebody's thought about it. I pre-digested it and spit it back up for them.
Right? So basically, we have the Medical Marijuana Enforcement Division is now becoming the Marijuana Enforcement Division located within the Colorado State Department of Revenue. They will be regulating both medical marijuana and recreational marijuana, correct? And then there's going to be 5 working groups who are going to go on these different policies, labeling, tracking, things like that. So let's just jump into it. Let's start talking about taxes. Who wants to start? Sam?
I can jump into this. We passed the Alcohol Marijuana Equalization Initiative, Amendment 64. That's the official name of it. I helped draft it. A lot of good people also drafted it and worked for it. That initiative was supposed to equalize marijuana and alcohol. What are the alcohol taxes currently in Colorado? You can look this up on the Department of Revenue website. The current alcohol tax at the state level is 8 cents on a gallon of beer. 8, and that's 3.2 beer. They also have an 8 cents per gallon of regular beer tax, 7 cents per liter of wine, and 62 cents per liter of hard alcohol. So those are the taxes that the alcohol industry deals with on an excise level. What is 8 cents of a gallon of beer? What percentage is that? A gallon of beer is approximately, give or take, a 12-pack. There's 128 ounces in a gallon. There's 12 ounces per beer. So it's actually about 11 beers. So a 12-pack. What does a 12-pack cost in Colorado? Anywhere from $14 to $18, depending on quality, right? So what is the percentage of 8 cents of $15 is 1/2 of 1% of the cost of that product. Alcohol, 1/2 of 1%. What is the proposal for marijuana taxes? 15% excise tax statewide. And by the way, they're going to try to collect this excise tax from your internally, vertically integrated businesses. So when you transfer from your wholesale warehouse to your retail, you have to pay a 15% excise tax from your own product. Good luck on that. In addition to the 15%, then they're going to charge, this is a proposal, you can still vote no, and I'll get to how you should vote on these in a second. Secondly, 10% sales tax statewide. So now we're up to effectively a 25% tax rate. The latest proposal in Denver is to begin with a 5% sales tax just for marijuana and ratchet that up to 10% in time. So we're up to 30%, possibly 35% in Denver. Add to that the normal sales tax, which we all pay already, which everything is taxed at that, and that's 2.9% statewide, so basically 3%. Plus in Denver, your sales tax is 7.62%. So you're up to 35 plus another 7%. So it is a 42% tax rate if the government gets its way. If the government gets its way, 42%, give or take, depending on which locality you're in and all that. Can we deal with that? Is that something our industry can take? I don't think so.
We've talked about maybe placing it, I mean, as I've sat, the meetings I've sat in, maybe placing it on the consumer. The consumer doesn't have that amount of money. We know that that will create a black market. So, I mean, what are we proposing? What do we say to somebody who's doing this?
It's axiomatic. The consumer will pay all this, or they won't pay all this because the black market, which is untaxed and unregulated, in addition to the gray market, which is legal but untaxed and unregulated, and there's a very active gray market in recreational marijuana right now. It's out there. So, you know, this tax is potentially destructive to our industry. We want a regulated industry to survive, and I did vote for 64, which did have in it a 15% excise tax. So that was in there, and we voted for that. I thought it was a little high, and it was a ceiling, not a floor. The legislature grabbed that and more. So, you know, I'm advocating people to vote no on these taxes, and I'm advocating our industry unite and advocate for a no vote. Reasonable taxes we can deal with. So unreasonable taxes we can't.
So Rob
is correct on a few points.
That's a good
But he's wrong on advocating a no vote, and here's why. And Sean will be able to help me out on this. It's one thing to have an overly regulated industry. It's one to have one that's not properly funded. And it's not like we're operating in a strictly legal market where there's competition, where there's history of regulation. You know, this is a brand new frontier, and obviously that's going to take some sort of very strict enforcement, safe oversight, and you can't do that without funding in place, and 15% excise tax isn't going to institute the proper funding. I think Sean can help take it from here.
So I think that when you are talking to your elected officials, particularly your local elected officials, the first thing you need to understand is that if the state tax passes, they get 15% of the state tax into the sales tax into the coffers. They can do with it whatever they want. But the other thing is, and I think this is something you need to think about when you talk to any lawmaker, is there is this idea, and many lawmakers had that marijuana is this brand new thing. Marijuana wasn't invented on December 12th. Neither was the marketplace for it. Because let me demonstrate to you the marketplace for people who are not medical marijuana patients in the state of Colorado that has been the marketplace for as long as anybody can remember. Allow me to demonstrate. Hey man, what's going on? Yeah, I was wondering if I could come by a little bit. Oh sure, wait, honey. He said we should bring the kids because our kids want to hang out. This idea that this black market in Colorado is this dangerous dark alley thing is not correct. They are correct that people don't want to go to a dark alley, that's why that doesn't exist. Marijuana is sold in every neighborhood, in every city in this state, from people that we all know and are friends with. So this idea that the consumer behavior is going to magically change from, I'm going to call my friend whenever I feel like I can go over their house, whenever I feel like our kids are going to play together and talk about their homework, to instead, I'm going to get in my car, drive across town or to a different town, and then be on camera, and then pay 15% inflated because of the excise tax, an additional 10% tax, plus all the other taxes. That is just simply not correct. And what you need to explain to elected officials, whether you're a consumer or a business owner, is that the regulated marijuana industry is not competing in a vacuum. It's competing against consumer behavior that is well established, and there is no incentive for the consumer to change the behavior if the tax rate is extraordinary, and there's no mandate in Amendment 64 for medical marijuana businesses to switch over to recreational. So if they tax this too much, what will happen is that business owners who are medical marijuana businesses will look at the business proposition and say, well, do I want to invest an additional 15% in my business in addition to my extraordinary taxation based on the IRS 280E, on the idea that maybe the consumer will change their behavior when I can't even advertise to them? Or do I want to continue with my current medical marijuana patient business and continue to have my business thrive and succeed? That will be what choice that business will make, and Amendment 64 will have had, in effect, no effect for the average Colorado marijuana consumer. These local taxes are an absolute threat to the will of the voters, and you must speak to every single one of your local elected officials and make sure that they understand that.
Well, I'd like to add to what Sean's saying. In addition to that, the excise tax really makes having product to sell recreationally by January 1st really, really difficult. If we don't have an excise tax, it's a lot easier to split plants from your grow and designate some of them, because technically you're stealing plants from a patient and then taxing them, which is pretty shady for the state to do. If we vote the excise tax down, it's a lot easier for the existing medical businesses to divert some of their product, because you're not trying to add an onerous tax that's inappropriate to plants that were designated for medical use the day before. And that's something that's going to have a really big impact on our ability to transfer not just plants, but inventory and other products that we may have in inventory to a dual licensing. And with all due respect to what Sean says, if that tax passes, I might not want to go for medical license, from medical to dual licensing. But the reality is 85% of my business clients are already talking about becoming dually licensed, which means I'm forced to whether I want to or not, taxes or not. So it just basically means that I'm one layer less profitable in reality. And that's a really bad thing for all of us, and I think that as an industry we definitely need to stand together and reach out not just to our own community, but to conservatives and be like, there's no way you would pass this tax on anybody else. If you want to call yourself a conservative, you cannot in good conscience lobby for this tax against one segment of society. It's just not fair.
I have a question for Sean, because you guys have been bouncing around the state a little bit, like I have, going to all these towns and counties and whatever, and talking to these legislators. And a lot of them are putting in moratoriums into place until November, December, and they're waiting on the tax vote in November that we're going to have to make on the state level. If that fails, what do you think their response is going to be?
They won't opt in.
I think the state legislature will propose a lower tax, a tax that makes sense.
And then you have a whole year.
What would the localities do?
No, tax-free, which is what we should be
You
anyway.
still have to wait.
Taxed like everyone else, just like everyone else.
Well, I want to say that some of these communities where we're talking to city councilmen and mayors, it just seems like they all got their hand out and they're saying, now we can either opt out and you guys can do without your recreational, or we're going to have us a tax here just so that the city gets some benefit out of it.
Then they're going to be even more upset, and then they're going to start taxing medical. I mean,
That's
it's like,
the big
and
debate.
then you're going to have an even more angry. No, listen, I understand. Like, you fight the local taxes. The local taxes are terrible. They're awful. It's onerous. The state tax, I'm sorry, but it has to pass, because here's what it's going to do. It's going to trigger federal intervention, and that's not like a threat. That's just an inevitability. And if you don't think so, look at the audits that have been coming out lately. saying that this hasn't been enforced and it hasn't been enforced properly, that's gonna be the biggest thing. And then and Sean can attest to this too, Sean Coleman, that when there's a lapse in regulatory streamlining, or if there's doubt within the voter populace, whatever happens, it will trigger federal intervention. We've seen it happen in California, we've seen it happen in Montana.
So what Samantha is referring to, and as a matter of disclosure, Samantha and I are lobbying partners, so we've had lots of conversations about lots of things. So what I was explaining to legislators during the legislative session, particularly when there was a proposal to tie the tax ballot question to the implementation of the regulatory program, was that there is a clear history of when pro-marijuana ballot measures fail, or city councils or local governments take negative anti-marijuana actions, it is usually followed by pretty swift federal intervention. This is seen primarily in California, but it's also was seen in Washington State when the governor, the former governor, vetoed the medical marijuana implementation ordinance back in 2010. All of a sudden, all the dispensaries in Spokane got raided when the Montana legislature passed their first bill that rolled back parts and provisions of the medical marijuana program up there. There was federal intervention, so that there is a pattern. But to kind of nuance that argument a little bit, what I'm referring to is when these are incidents where there's a negative voter or legislative idea on marijuana. I don't know. First of all, two things have changed. The first thing that's changed is that the White House, as well as Department of Justice, have been pretty clear when they're talking to members of Congress that their decision is going to be made on a political decision. And would it be politically wise to get involved in Colorado or Washington's actions? And you're talking about two states that are states that these folks are Democrats, and they need these states to win. Elections come 2014 and 2016, so they're not going to be in a real rush to upset the voters here. I question whether or not they would view and again, I'm not advocating for the state tax one way or the other by saying this. I don't know if they would view the voters rejecting the state tax as a voter rejection of the medical marijuana, of the retail marijuana program. In fact, I think that one can conclude that it would actually be the opposite, because there was an opportunity to tag the regulations of retail marijuana to the tax. That was defeated by the General Assembly, and the regulatory program has a general fund appropriation for the next 5 years. So even if the tax proposal doesn't pass, the MED will still be getting a $5 million appropriation from the general fund every year regardless. The point of the sales tax was to backfill that general fund appropriation so that that $5 million isn't being taken from other state purposes. But I respectfully disagree with the interpretation of my theory.
Do you disagree with the interpretation that the legislature will be angry?
No, I think that.
If the tax
I don't think there's a single legislative body in the state that's not going to be furious if the taxes don't pass, whether the state or local.
Do you disagree?
They should be angry with themselves.
No, but do you also disagree with the interpretation that the Amendment 64 wasn't just carried by purely the industry and activists? There was a big chunk of Colorado that voted for this purely to see it taxed because they wanted to get some revenue. And that is a huge chunk of the Colorado voting population.
And they voted.
And do you not think that I'm just saying, and do you not think that what the industry did promise, we promised them a 15% excise tax. I do, I get it. It's not cool or fair that it's tied to a 10% sales tax. And now that the governments are coming in, the local governments, after they've already been given a share back, that is not fair. But you don't think that...
It's not a 10% sales tax. Let's get that clear to begin with here.
Well, look, I don't think it was wise of the General Assembly to tie the two taxes together in one ballot question, because the voters did vote for and anticipated that there might be a 50% excise tax. The 10% sales tax was the General Assembly's idea. I also don't think it's particularly wise for local governments to pile on, because the reality is the more taxes you have on a ballot, the more likely anything will fail. And by the time voters get to the any local taxes, forget about whether it's for marijuana or not, the voters are going to have been asked to open their wallet to the tune of $2 billion. The biggest tax on the ballot is the School Finance Act, which is a $1 billion tax increase on the state. And then as followed, the next question on the ballot will be, by the way, you just spent $1 billion on schools. Would you like to spend another $70 billion on maybe school construction and marijuana regulation? And then on down you go to the ballot. By the time you get down to the city of Boulder, city of Denver, the voters already spent $2 billion. Do they want to spend another $5 or $6 million? I don't know. So, what I would recommend to the people in the audience is that you talk to your local elected officials and you make it clear that you expect them to implement Amendment 64 regardless of the outcome. Because what I think needs to be understood by local elected officials is that they are trying the patience of the voters. This idea that people make argument they make, well, we don't know what the voters voted for. Maybe they voted to ban the local governments to ban. That's not what people voted for. Let's be realistic. If you were opposed to retail marijuana stores as a possibility, you had a very easy way to safeguard your bet. You could have voted no. People voted yes.
Colorado Springs.
People voted yes with some anticipation that there would be retail marijuana stores, and the voters are frankly getting tired. So first, the number one message is no taxation without regulation. And the second message is that we don't care about your slush funds. We voted for regulation of marijuana like alcohol, and that is what we expect. And you can either vote for that on your city council, or you can vote for your opponent in the next election. And that has got to be the message, has got to be clear.
And we can't be worried as an industry. Our job as an industry is not to please the state legislature. The state legislature doesn't support Amendment 64. That's why we had to do it with the voters. The state legislature never would have enacted this measure. The state legislature is not our friends. The state legislature needs to hear a message, a cogent, unified message from our industry. Stop trying to take 40% of this industry's money to use for your pet government projects. Last time I checked, these people are arrogant enough, they literally want a gold roof over their heads. That's what they want. Now, I'd love to have a gold roof on my house, and I'm sure a lot of us would love to have a gold roof on our houses. None of us have that. There isn't a single building in the state of Colorado that has a gold roof except for the state legislature. That's how arrogant these people are. So I don't care what they think about our industry. And as for the federal government, the lack or existence of a 40% tax doesn't either protect us from the federal government or it doesn't bring the federal government in. The federal government has left our industry in Colorado alone for the duration of the industry other than two things. One thing, the 1,000 feet from a school deal, we all know about that. We dealt with it, we moved. They left us alone for the most part. And then Chris Barkowitz. Those are the two things where the federal government cared about our industry. Other than that, they've completely left us alone. And this entire time, we have been taxed identically to every other business. And that's what I'm asking. I'm not asking for marijuana to be tax-free, but I'm not asking for it to be 40% tax. It should be taxed like everything else, which is where it's been right now. It has been taxed like everything else. So we work hard in this industry, and it is not, the perception of the people out there is, 20-year-olds are printing millions of dollars a month. That's not the way it is. And in fact, the government is partially to blame for that because of the regulations they've lumped on us. That wrecks our profitability more times than not. So this is not a huge cash cow. We need to educate the government about that. But the first step is to reject these taxes, vote no, and if the legislature gets a no vote, they'll go back to the drawing board and they'll probably propose a more reasonable tax that we can live with. Maybe something like what alcohol is, the Alcohol Marijuana Equalization Initiative. That's what we designed, that's what we voted.
Some of us have been patiently waiting to rebut Sean's statement for about 15 fucking minutes here, so just calm down.
Green roofs, gold hats.
Yes.
Gold hats, that's
All right, so my point would like to be that honestly, I think everyone should vote no on the state level taxes and vote yes for your local taxes and give your local government an incentive to work with you. Honestly, I'm in the opposite camp from Sean. I think the state tax is a fucking bunch of crap. The state got $300 million just from the 3% tax that they got from the entire state revenue from cannabis sales last year for medical only. We don't need to give these people more than $300 million that we've already given them. And beyond that, your local governments are the ones where you're having The state has already said it's okay. Your bigger issue is with your local government. You need a better friend there. And most of these local governments aren't talking 25%, they're talking 5, 6, 7, 10% on top of the 25%. Vote no on the 25%, vote yes on the 5 or 6% in your own community. Because that's your school, that's your kid, that's your neighbor.
Well, first, I do want to say, and I think I did say it, but if I didn't, wasn't clear, I will clarify now. All of that I was saying for your information purposes, I wasn't advocating one way or the other for the state tax. I think I said that, but if I didn't, that's what I meant. I'm not advocating one way or the other on the state tax. And to clarify, as until Tuesday night, thanks to with the help of some people in this room, Boulder was actually considering a 25% tax. Boulder, city of Boulder.
25%.
25%.
Can I ask everybody in here, how many people in our audience are cannabis business owners? And how many of you are in Denver? Okay, how many of you are in suburbs, other local municipalities besides Denver? Okay, so, I mean, this is huge. How many of you have lobbyists? You scared to raise your hand?
They're all up here.
So I think that right now, I mean, this is new for us as an industry. We don't know that we have to do all, I mean, this is, it's already a lot, you know, to pay.
I just want to reiterate how important it is to talk to your local officials. They want to hear about it. They want to hear from business owners. They're trying to figure out if they should tax at the local level and where it should go and what it should be. And it's important that you talk to them, and particularly right now while they're.
And I'll be honest with you, like this coming out thing has been a little difficult for those of us who have been in the industry for a long time. Like, you know, even with me, it's like, you know, we take each situation by, you know, like how, you know, it's situation specific. And now it's like, it's turning into a rush, and it's very fast. And it's, a lot of people want to talk about it. They expect you to call them and talk to them about things right away. And it's still a little bit hard. I mean, we are emerging out of prohibition. You know, and a lot of these business owners have a lot to lose.
Yeah.
So we didn't even know we were supposed to call our local state officials last year and even say we were there. You know, we were supposed to.
If you're afraid to come out of the closet, you're going to lose your investment. I mean, why would you make an investment if you're afraid to admit you made it?
Yeah, I mean, and I mean, now we're learning it's okay, but it's still scary.
It's always been okay. If you weren't
And a
proud
lot of
of
these
being in this, you
city
should have stayed in the closet and gotten a straight job.
But I think
A lot of these city governments are throwing these taxes at the most ridiculous things. If you went to the Denver City Council meeting, they're talking about putting on 6 vans to go around and pick up people who are too stoned to drive. Ridiculous. It's ridiculous. We're going to be on the
It's because they want
and all
other
articles of time.
And, you know, I just want to throw really quickly, kind of to Sean House's point and to Chloe's point as well. There's 2 things. There's one, there's talking to your local elected officials, which you must do. If you don't know your city council member, change that tomorrow. If you don't know your county commissioner, change that tomorrow. If you don't know your state representative, your state senator, change that tomorrow. But then the second aspect of it, which is kind of Chloe's point, which is you also have to know how to talk to these people. Because they don't speak your language. They don't speak the language of you're running a small business. They don't speak the language of you're a responsible marijuana consumer. They speak the language of, they hear from the law enforcement lobby, they hear from the prison lobby, they hear from, you know, as we started to call them at the Capitol, the smart moms, the people who are the perpetual prohibitionists. That's who they hear from. And those people know how to speak their language. So you need to know how to speak the language of the legislature, because otherwise, it doesn't matter how bright you are. If they don't understand you, it does not matter. So how do you speak to these people? Number one, as on an individual perspective, I'm a voter. I voted very clearly because I want there to be regulated retail marijuana stores. Don't believe that me, the voter, voted for your ability to ban it or your ability to tax it. That is not what I voted for. I voted for because I want to go into a store and buy marijuana that's safe and legal and tested. That's what I voted for.
So
yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Secondly, I did not vote for you to have an infinite slush fund. So if you need to have a reason for your taxes. Don't just say, well, because I don't understand, me, legislature, I don't understand what's going to happen. what they're saying is like, we need these taxes because we don't understand what's going to happen.
I mean, you're not in favor of the Christian Thurstone permanent
Well,
employment package?
certainly not. Yeah, and certainly you did not vote for Amendment 64, so people like Dr. Thurston could have a line item slush fund in the Denver City budget.
But he needs that vote.
Oh, I want to vote too.
How many people here think the industry could survive that?
One final
Buy him a rowboat.
One final point to all that, which is that I expect you, my elected official, to move deliberately to support what I voted for. So that doesn't mean moratorium. That doesn't mean ban. That doesn't mean, oh, we're going to implement it, we're going to do it in July of next year, or October, or 2015. What I meant is the state constitution says I can expect to walk into a store and buy marijuana on January 1, 2014. And that's what I intend to do, and you're going to make it happen because you work for me.
And I also want to say something about your local officials and your local situation. You might, if you're in a community where you really feel like your community is on the cusp, you might want to preemptively start gathering signatures for a special election, even though they haven't banned it already, and get out ahead of that. Because the reality is, there's going to be a lot of places that change their mind about what they want to do in November, and then you're screwed. You got to wait a whole long time for another election unless you're ready to go right then and ready to hit the ground running right then. And you don't want to wait that whole year. It's unfair to you, and you're going to face unfair competition during that time.
And if you've saved up that money and you find out that you don't need it for those purposes, then contribute that money to the campaign of your 420 friendly legislator. Because, I mean, it was one of the state reps, Jonathan Singer, came and testified at the Boulder City Council meeting the other night. He sat there with all the rest of us until after 11 o'clock waiting to testify. And he was there, and that makes a big impression. So when it comes time for him to be up for re-election, you can bet there's a group of us that are going to be donating to his campaign.
So we have city council members coming to testify at the, I mean, this is really this is where we're at. This is amazing.
And I want to say something about what Terry said to elections. That one thing that I think is really not on the radar right now and needs to be is who's running in the AG election in the coming year, because it's going to have a huge impact on us. Whoever gets that job is going to be who decides how everything that impacts all of us is run. And right now we don't have a single candidate that's even remotely friendly to us.
Yeah, they're all their candidates for AG are bad for drug policy and marijuana policy overall. It's kind of the lesser of the weakness.
So, and also, really want to go back to
They're all evil, there's no lesser evil.
But it's something where we need to maybe start talking about identifying our own candidate.
I want to just quickly go back to a point. I just want to quickly go back to a point Jessica made that was really important before we lose that thread, which is what happens with your local governments. So there's a variety of ways. For one, local governments cannot prefer a ballot measure to ban marijuana businesses except for on an even number of years. So the first time they would have to be able to do that would be 2014. However, if a city council or town board passes an ordinance, you can challenge that immediately. You have to collect signatures, and you have to look at your particular town or city's charter for how that process works. But you can have a citizen initiative to overturn an action of your town board or council, depending on. So it's important. These, not to suggest that everybody in the room hire a lobbyist right away, but that is kind of one of the reasons why that profession does exist, because that's our job to know how your particular town or city charter works. But in a lot of cases, you have the ability to, sometimes 30 days, sometimes it's 60 days, to petition against an action of your town board or city council. And if you get enough signatures, they generally either have to immediately reconsider it and change their mind, or then it goes to an election, and depending on where it is in the calendar, it would either be a special election if November's too far away, or it'd be a November election. But again, it depends on what the timeline is. In general, it's about 120 days. So for example, if your city council were to ban in January, and you got petitions to overturn that ban of the city council, they would have to probably do a special election sometime in like June or something like that, because November would be too far away. So that's just something to keep in mind as well.
And it's also, there are two localities or two towns in Colorado right now where there are groups that are looking at and should be filing initiatives to repeal their
get on
city
the-
council's moratoriums coming up, so, or bans coming up. So we are seeing that already.
And
Those
that would be
beyond the
Larimer,
2013.
you said, right? There's a proposed ban on edibles in Larimer.
In Larimer
And
County.
then there's additional local taxes proposed for Denver and Boulder.
Yeah, and a number
But
of
that's
us actually are
the-
trying to look at local taxes. And what's important to remember too on the local government level is a lot of local officials are weighing heavily on whether or not the tax measure is going to pass in making their decision on the state level, in making their decision on whether or not to ban or to place a moratorium. So support for the state tax is important in that manner. In the big picture, what is important is that localities move forward and they don't ban and they don't impose a moratorium.
Can I ask you guys a question? Now, I've never heard of a ban on edibles. Like, I thought you either ban marijuana or you don't. I mean, when are we gonna start telling people, listen, you can smoke it like this, you can do this?
They're actually, here they talk
Edibles are-
about how smoking marijuana is so bad and cancer and comparing it with tobacco, and yet they're looking at banning edibles, so that's eliminating, and along with that, I would probably tinctures and everything else. So essentially, you're going to be limited to smoking or vaping. So, I mean, it really doesn't make any sense, but I can tell you that it's all coming from the Save the Children perspective.
As you're going through legislation, you're gonna find more and more and more people start piling on rumors, start piling on wishes, and in the end, wanting to negotiate a settlement that really is where they want. And we gotta try to figure out what that is, and I think it's probably 5% on the states, and I think that's too much.
Well, and I'm-
This
How many people think the taxes are too much? I mean, can we as an industry afford this tax? I don't think we can. I mean, I don't think we can. I mean, we're not.
It'll be the consumers that end up paying the tax.
I mean, and
It'll
is
all
that
come down
going to
to
create the black market?
Well,
I
the
mean,
owners will pay too because we'll lose business.
Yeah.
I mean, even our small meager share will be cut down.
because it's a sin tax.
Now, I want to be really clear about what the state taxes actually are, because the state legislature, in my opinion, has been disingenuous and misleading in how it's been presented, and the media and everybody else has gone along with it. Our state legislature has now shown the rest of the state how to get around TABOR. And they've got a 15, what they're calling up to 15% excise tax, which they've indicated that they will probably start at 15%, but supposedly they can lower it if you've ever heard of them actually lowering a tax. And then the special sales tax is what we call, what was it, 10%, and trust me, because the actual language says that they can charge up to 15%. But on January 1st, that tax will be 10%. But after that, they can change it, they can raise it, they can lower it. So be aware that when you're voting for this, that you're potentially voting for 15% excise tax and a 15% special sales tax on marijuana. I just think you need to be, you need to know the truth.
This vote is also, let me say one thing, this vote is bigger than just taxes. That's an important issue, but you know, our industry, I mean, when we started this thing in 07, 08, we were kind of with our tail between our legs. We're not sure we're legitimate. We're, you know, federally questionable. We pretty much just took everything the government threw at us and made us do. But, you know, this is 2013. We have won a major election decisively, all right? We got more votes than Barack Obama in Colorado. We are more
Almost a
popular than
million
Barack
more.
Obama, and I'm tired of this industry getting beat up. We saved our state's economy, this industry did. Yes, we did. We hired people, we rented out space. You know, we have built these businesses and we've worked our butts off to do it. And if we defeat these tax proposals, that is a huge shot against the bow of the government. Stop messing with marijuana. Stop trying to cash in on marijuana. You know, we work hard. Treat us like every other industry. Don't treat us better. Don't treat us worse. Just treat us like everything else. Equalize us with alcohol. So if we win this thing, I mean, our industry and the feds, as Sean says, an excellent point, the feds care what voters think. They really do. I mean, the only reason, one of the things, probably the main thing that keeps the feds away from us is public opinion. And they know that we're more popular than their commander-in-chief, Barack Obama. And not to mention that the U.S. Department of Justice has quite a few things on its hands right now. There's quite a few scandals that it's dealing with. They can't deal with the scandal of trying to undermine an industry in a state that employs probably 10,000 people. I mean, there are people who feed their families with. You're here. You feed your families with this industry. So, you know, we defeat this tax thing. It not only does it save us 40%, but it is also a real strong symbolic victory that keeps the feds and the state away from us and keeps those governments from trying to mess with us anymore. There is no other industry in the world that would for a second tolerate a 40% tax on what we do. Name me the industry that is going to...
But Rob, we operate in a vacuum here. It's not like you can go to like Utah and say, oh, you're going to tax us cheaper.
I mean, even the porn industry or the gambling industry wouldn't tolerate that. I mean,
the porn industry tolerates a lot from what I see.
And I'm tired of being
people I see
ashamed.
wanting to support the
We
taxes
shouldn't be
are
ashamed to be in the
lobbyists.
marijuana industry. We should not be ashamed
It's not
of it.
being ashamed, it's operating in reality. Rob.
Accepting a 40%
It's operating in
tax
reality. No, it's not a
you're
40%
ashamed of what
tax,
you
first
do.
of all. It's 25%.
So I want to interject.
bullshit.
Second of all, it's operating with
Okay.
reality, because here's the reality what's gonna happen. Licensing fees are gonna go through the roof. Registered
So
guys are getting
I just want to briefly interject. Again, to be clear, because Jessica Nix just reminded me that only the lobbyists are supporting the tax. I want to be very clear that everything I say is not intended to be construed as either support for or opposition to the tax, but for you to think about.
Okay, so real quick.
So if you look at those,
So here's the thing to think about.
All right, we're gonna bring this conversation together.
Here's
that state tax.
Here's the thing that I want you to think about. Just food for thought. Our legalization success in Colorado and the one that we share with Washington is part of a national movement. So everything that we do sets precedent for the rest of the country.
I'm not
So,
paying 40%
so
tax.
listen to what I'm saying. So what you need to think about is whether you vote for or against a state tax or for or against a local tax, what message does that send to the states that would follow us? It's a matter of thinking about this from the perspective of you are setting precedent no matter what you do.
Set the precedent not to be pussies and stand up for your rights and don't get railroaded for your fucking money.
So, with that
I am a
said,
hippie over there.
I would like to let
Make sure
everybody
you
know
stand
that
with me, Rob.
we have, okay, so we're gonna stop talking about taxes, it sucks. We're gonna talk about transferring our licenses, but with that said, I want to ask one question, just to you, TJ, does the union support the taxes?
State tax, yes, we do, and let me kind of explain that. We have campaigns going
Just TJ.
throughout the country, and throughout the country, we want to see what's happening in Colorado go other places, and we think it made it much easier in Colorado to put that excise tax on the ballot of 64 to get people who were not marijuana users to come to our side.
And I'm not sure if you guys understand what the union can do for an industry like this, but they can put hundreds of workers on the floor. And I'm sorry, but just like a million votes, that could be very strong for our industry. So the fact that everybody's stepping up to this is huge for us as well. But we are, the first business owners. Are we the one that has to pay for all of this and set it forward? So what we have done is we've launched the Cannabis Business Association, one professional business association that you can be part of or not, that will actually hire we have every lobbyist on this panel we're hiring, and we're going to basically start a tax campaign, and we're going to provide free approved vendor programs monthly for our members. We're going to actually, and my approved vendor programs are certified by the Department of Education. So we're going to work with every industry group. We're not going to be for any problems, any craziness. We're going to just look for solutions and really try to bring a solution to this taxes. And I think we all need to pull together because there's a lot of differences, but it's hard for a bunch of business owners sitting here too. We need a solution, and I think that that's going to be the best way. So, with that said, shall we talk about transferring the licenses? When can we actually expect retail stores to open?
January 1st, 2014.
And that you think they're going to be
I see
selling
a lot
and
of problems
open?
with having product on the shelf on that day.
It really depends on the locality too. Every local government's kind of moving at its own pace. Hopefully the bigger ones will move on time, but there's a significant number that are going with short moratoriums, kind of like March 2014, July 2014. So I think you'll kind of see them roll out differently. The hope is that Denver will move forward on time and kind of set the precedent for the rest of the state. So kind of pressuring your local officials here to move forward on time is really important.
Yeah, January 1st is going to be a beautiful day in Colorado. You're going to see thousands of times in our state people walking into a retail store and buying marijuana, and they will only have to show a state-issued driver's license. They won't have to show a registry card. They won't have to have that registry card photocopied. They won't have to be on any sort of database whatsoever other than the DMV database. And these people can be from anywhere in the world. You're not just restricted to Colorado residents. January 1st,
Freedom, freedom.
yeah, it's going to be a good day. I mean, whether you pay 40% more for your marijuana remains to be seen, but there will be a big rush, I believe, with or without the taxes. It'll be a much bigger rush without the taxes, but without or with the taxes, you're going to see a huge rush on retail marijuana stores. The novelty factor is going to be huge. I mean, my mother, who would never buy marijuana in a parking lot transaction, would consider walking into one of these open stores and purchasing it in a reasonable credit card transaction and safely walking outside to her car and maybe not a credit card transaction, but a legitimate legal transaction that's legal under our laws of our state.
I just
And
want to ask you a question, Rob.
people are going to be coming from all over the world to do that.
I want to ask you a quick question.
By it.
Ask.
Based on
Order.
actually reading the rules that the DOR put out, how are you reconciling the date of January 1st with the 90-day licensing process and the fact that it says a retail recreational center can only sell marijuana that was transferred to it from a fully, completely licensed retail recreational cultivation? If that retail recreational cultivation is licensed within a 90-day period, how do they have a finished plant to cultivate, harvest, and have dried on January 1st?
Well, I didn't write these regulations, but I did help to write 64, and it says that you can apply for a license on October 1st of this year, and it requires them to grant that license within 90 days of the application, so October 1st, January 1st. That's how I calculate that date.
And remember, the medical plants magically become recreational plants.
Yeah, there was so just your subtext is, I think, well taken, and the answer is the state is going to allow the retail business to steal a patient's plants. It's going to happen. There's no way to stop it. It's going to happen. That's all there is to it.
Right, but they can't steal finished inventory.
That said, and also, I think there's, I don't want to go too far into that, but if the local governments allow businesses to be open to January 1, I think is a more important question. So that is what, again, you need to be talking to your local elected officials and say, look, a moratorium until July, October, whenever, is not acceptable. It's ridiculous. To be up to, I really hope that I'm wrong about this, but from all the evidence I'm seeing working with local governments, I think March is optimistic at this point. Every single local government is looking for a reason to delay.
The reality is it's all going to start like a Russian bread market where the shelves are going to be empty very quickly. And the idea of medical marijuana means...
Greg, will you speak into the mic just a little bit more so I can hear you?
sorry. So the idea of medical marijuana retail and recreation retail is that both are going to be able to operate in the same geographical location. Unfortunately, that means that only adults 21 years and older can buy in these areas. So you're going to have the same product sold to medical marijuana patients and recreational patients. It's going to start off very, very slow on January 1st, 2014, until we can kind of get through these local moratoriums, through the licensing process. The MMED, their licensing process, they still haven't licensed people who submitted applications 3 years ago. So I don't think we're going to be seeing those licenses completed very quickly.
But we corrected that in 64. 64 requires the license to be issued in 90 days, and if it's not issued, then you get it automatically. But that is fixed.
But it's issued.
All of my clients are applying on October 1st, and all of my clients are open for retail business for recreational marijuana on January 1st. And that's a long way approved. Every single one of them. And if they say no, then bring it on.
I'm not talking about...
But it's got to go through the state and local approval process.
Because licenses can be approved in 90 days provisionally, and that provision is based off of local approval. I agree totally with Sean.
Yeah.
Local is where the battle's at.
Yeah.
The emergency rules currently say that you can't open your doors for business until you have both approvals. You can
We'll
continue working toward it,
We
but
will
you don't
see.
get to open your doors for business until you have both approvals. So you have an entire year. So you can pay your rent and have your doors closed for an entire year.
Jessica,
We'll
what is
see.
it going to take to transfer these licenses? What is that going to be like?
I think we have a lot of things that are stumbling blocks that we need to be aware of. That you can apply on October 1st, but there may be a whole new set of rules after the election in November because of the fact that the taxes will impact the decision that they make in the licensing process.
And if the taxes go down, there'll be a lot fewer pinheaded bureaucrats poking around in your spot telling you, well, that was a medical plan once and now it's a recreational plan. That's the other thing.
And a lot
Keep that in
fewer
mind.
municipalities and cities letting you open up shop at all, Rob.
I disagree with that.
You really think that if the tax fails, the Denver's just gonna say, oh yeah, come on,
Yeah, they
Boulder,
get
stop
tax
trying to
revenue.
fear Colorado Springs, Aurora,
they get
even
tax
Aurora, we
revenue.
have moratoriums.
They get tax revenue already right now.
What about Aurora, what about Colorado Springs?
Aurora's a done deal. It's not happening.
I think the
anyway.
majority
Yes, it
of
will happen.
local governments are weighing heavily on whether the tax measure is going to pass in their decision whether or not to ban.
I think in reality, whatever local governments allow it, they're going to experience a huge flood of recreational tourism to those towns.
I think they're using the tax like a gun to our heads. You're gonna pass this tax if you want your marijuana. If you don't pass the tax, then we're all gonna withhold it from you.
Exactly.
How easy is it going to be to find a
I say we
recreational
go back to
facility?
that one.
If you open up a candy bar and eat it on the premises, while you're walking, I mean, I'm just saying, recreation, it's great in Amsterdam because you could go to all these coffee shops and you can sit there and socialize with like-minded individuals who enjoy the same thing as you. But in this, I mean, it's literally, you still have to go buy it and then you have to find somebody to smoke it with if you come on your own, and
The
then
businesses are gonna have to put up signs that
You
say
can only buy a
recreation
quarter.
and medical, or else you'd never know.
So it's interesting. How many business owners here are going to switch to recreational?
How many are gonna go dual licenses?
Both.
Dual.
Both has to be the option.
But again, remember that is up to the discretion of your local government. Your local government can say, you can either be, because there's a couple of choices. You can either be retail only, you could be medical only, you could be dual, all 21 and above, which means that you don't have to build any new inventories, you have to keep separate inventories, or it can be dual and continue to serve patients 18 to 21. But if you do that, that requires you building a separate entrance and exit and those other things. And any one of these choices, your local government can pick or choose, like an a la carte buffet. So if you want, I would not make an assumption that if your local government has said, we're not going to ban retail, that means they're going to allow you to be medical and retail in the same location. In fact, I know for a fact in Boulder, that is, they don't want to do that. We're going to have to work very hard to even get them to the point of allowing retail and medical in the same spot, which is because their view is, how are we going to regulate this? You got to understand that these people don't do what you do every day. So they are afraid of this because they don't understand it. It's just a natural human response. It doesn't make them bad people, doesn't make them pro-business, it just makes them people.
I don't have kids, but I'm not trying to stop
Look,
people from having children.
Jessica.
So can I ask just a quick question? How many licenses can each business pool?
So under 1317, there's no limitation on how many particular types of licenses you can hold.
And they'll be how much?
But cities also have the ability to do that. And I think Steamboat's talking about that right now, where it's saying that you can only have one retail license in the city or one. And I think that's another discussion. So do not sleep on your city councils.
Yeah.
When they say, oh, we're going to implement, read the details. Because the details will impact your business. It's like, there are going to be some cities where, oh, well, I've got 3 centers in this town. Well, you used to. Because the city will say, no, you can only have one. Because you said regular like alcohol. You got to understand, it's not to say that...
So at any point, they can take their medical facility recreational. They don't have to do it by October. If they wait till January or February and let a few other people do it first, then that just means that they have to pull it later and they have a chance of possibly ending up in the back of the application pile and not being accepted to operate recreational, but they can still operate as a medical facility until they're approved, correct? Or as Rob is saying, within 90 days, unless...
There's some pretty nasty conversion hearings and stuff that's in language, especially in the Denver City Council, with the very, very ugly language coming that's going to make us go to hearings in front of the neighborhood.
Just like
we
the
operate.
alcohol.
And a lot of
Just
local
like alcohol, or
jurisdictions.
maybe worse.
Yeah.
And everybody that supports us is at work. They have this hearing in the middle of the afternoon at 1 o'clock, and they got all the white hairs from the whole neighborhood in there to shut you down.
Stay at home.
And there's a lot of local governments who are going to want public hearings on renewals and transfers, and I mean, all those processes are going to be different depending on your local government. They can decide whether or not to allow transfers from other jurisdictions. They can decide whether or not they can cap them by number. They can say you only have 3 in the city. And like Sean said, it's so important to talk to your local officials right now because they can regulate time, place, and manner, and it can affect your whole business.
And Sean raises a very interesting point of you have to speak their language, and they understand the language of re-election. So if you explain to them that very, very calmly, very clearly, are you for or against? You're against, thank you very much for your time, I'll be voting for your opponent, I'll be funding your opponent. If they hear that a couple hundred times, they're going to listen. If they want to get reelected, I don't think that they have very strong opinions. I think they take on the opinions of whoever is in their office at that time, whoever the majority vote is, whatever is going to get them back in. So what we need to do is we need to make sure that we are the majority vote that gets in front of their faces, so they think that we are the public opinion and that we are calling the shots.
So to that point, again, how many people in the room know who your city council member is? Raise your hand. Yeah, see, that's not nearly enough. Tomorrow, not Monday, not next month. Tomorrow, find out who your city council member is. Call them. Tell them that you expect them to implement Amendment 64 and you expect them to do it in a timely manner, and you do not expect them to wait around till November to see how the election goes. Tomorrow, not later, not next week, not next year, tomorrow.
And if you're in Denver, you actually have 3 city council members you have 2 at large and then your own particular one, and they all need to hear from you.
And if I can put a shameless plug in, I am on the board of directors of Colorado Normal, and we just had a meeting, we're discussing about how we can put when these local meetings are occurring on our webpage. So please go to our webpage, look at our events coming up. We're going to try and use that as a resource, because a lot of times you don't know about these meetings, they just fly under the radar until 24, 40 hours before the meeting.
I think it would be good for these groups to pull together and have, somebody be there and be like, we would be more than happy if we have a streaming person there to stream them on Normal's website and try to work together as much as possible. And we already do have all of the dates on the Cannabis Business Association website too. We will be supporting groups like Normal and stuff that you know about. So definitely let us know how we can all help you. And also, if you have something that you don't agree with in the rules, there's a form here, a suggested revision to rules and regulations form that you get on the Department of Revenue website. And so this is how you have to communicate with them, I guess.
Just to let you know, the way the process is there will be these 5 working groups that are meeting, and they'll finish up around the middle of August. And then there's a week that's been kind of reserved for any additional meetings in case we need that time. And then the last half of August will be 3 days of public hearings where you can come in and you can comment, but you don't need to wait until then, because they are using those forms and they're taking suggestions. I mean, I sat through yesterday and today's meetings, and I can say that that they are very interested in getting feedback from the public, from the industry, because they know that we know better what the needs of the industry are and what works and what doesn't. And you hear really what seems to us be really crazy comments and really crazy comments and things like that, but a lot of those come out of ignorance because they just don't know our industry. They don't understand that all plants don't grow at the same rate, that certain strains are tall and leggy and other ones are small and bushy, and so we can't say that they're all going to weigh the same or should weigh the same.
They're cannabinoid deficient. It's not their fault.
They just don't know. So they need to hear from us. They need to hear from you.
Yeah, I mean, kind of to Rob's point, a lot of them are cannabinoid deficient, but I mean, you got to remember, election is a popularity contest. It's not a skill assessment. These people just don't know what you do, and because they don't understand, they're afraid. So what you have to do is reach out to them, talk to them, and make sure they have information so that they're not afraid. But you have to be careful not to blow their mind at one time. I mean, like, if you have a city council member who thinks that you can get high by touching marijuana, which I've had that conversation, you can't, don't pivot to, but don't pivot to like, put it in my queue counter. They're not ready yet.
And you can, as a lawyer, I can advise you, you can legally offer marijuana to your elected official as long as you're not selling it to them.
Yeah.
You can give him marijuana for free.
But don't give it to them without telling them it's
$40. Sean, you wrote the amendment.
Yeah, last time I checked, a joint
What is the value that they can receive as a gift?
So real quick, can I ask another question on these? Let's stick to real quick the compliance of transferring these licenses, because I know a lot of business owners here. Now, employees can work in both areas, or they can only work in a medical, or can your employees
Only
work in both?
currently medically licensed employees would be eligible to work in both areas, but if you've got a new badge under recreational only, then you can only work in recreational.
So did you hear that? So, and it's because the background check is deeper for medical than it is for recreational, so they decided medical.
Here is some really important things to remember, particularly for your friends who didn't qualify for a medical marijuana occupational license. That the retail marijuana license does check for licensing, which is a good thing because it's what they check for is irrational. So here are the things that no longer are barriers for employment in the industry. Back taxes, defaulted student loans, God damn it, I can't remember.
You know, when people like to list their stores, and I have buyers, I like to know how they filed, because they really, a lot of people didn't know that.
Here's another one. Certain felony convictions are no longer barred for employment. So if you have a marijuana-related charge that would not be a felony today, you can now be a badged employee. You still can't be an owner, but there's no legislative session we can try and fix that too. Because I think it's absolutely insane that you cannot get a license to own a business for the very thing you went to jail for. That's insanity. We have to fix it. Yeah, and you can be a rapist. That's fine. Come on, get your license. But if you went to jail because you were growing marijuana in your dorm room, you can't own a business. That's insanity. We're gonna fix that.
That's exactly the argument I made at the Amendment 64 task force. And it actually did get traction. You saw a physical change in the room, and then the political beast took over, and you just lost it.
Right.
And that 2-year residency thing is insane. That's ridiculous. We don't want money coming into our state. I mean, what is that? What other business is told to go away from our state? They've spent money to recruit business here from out of
If you went to
state.
yesterday's meeting where that was
That needs
discussed,
to
they
change.
actually said that if you didn't live, like, let's say you live in a mobile home, but it's not fixed in a park, well, you're not a resident. I don't know what other state you're exporting your residency to because you don't have a nice enough house, but
Okay.
you live in a teepee or whatever, they basically...
Sorry, that's extreme because the rule said such as a condo, an apartment, etc. It didn't say only these. And also, from what I understand, is there is someone that is looking up what the actual what the statutes in other areas say about what constitutes a resident. So that's a little too
With
far.
residency, they'll look at like where you pay your taxes and where you intend to live and where your electric bill is, and there's all sorts of
Your
factors.
mailing address.
It's going to be a totality of the service.
Your homeless shelter.
Yes.
I mean, why are we excluding those people?
But in general, statutes generally tend to look at residency from the lens of intent. So, for example, if you have a house in Colorado, you pay a utility bill in Colorado, but you spend 7 months of the year in Florida, they're probably going to say, we don't think you're a resident. So it's about that intent.
And if you list Florida
I
as your home
disagree.
state on your taxes,
If you have a house in Colorado, you're a resident. I'm sorry. If you have a house, you're a resident.
Well, let's discuss, as we close up here, our implementation for this. We have, of course, the emergency rule regulations come out July 1st, and then October 1st is when local governments must appoint local licensing authorities to accept retail marijuana applications. MMCs and MIPS must be licensed or have an application of good standing as of December 10th, 2012, with all fees paid in order to apply for one of the recreational marijuana RME, which I would assume, is that what that is? Those with the medical marijuana license will have the choice to surrender their MMC license or retain it, depending on whether the local government permits dual premises. Several options exist for converting MMCs or MIPS inventory to retail. November 5th, statewide vote on an excise tax at 15% and a retail, or it's now, it's 15, still, okay. And a retail sales tax that can be up to 15%, but will start at 10% with 15% of that 10%, 1.5% shared back to local governments where the business is located. Certain state legislators have threatened to repeal A64 if the tax fails. January 1st, 2014 is the earliest date retail marijuana establishment licenses can be issued for current MMCs. New entrants to the business can submit a notice of intent to apply for a recreational marijuana license. July 1st, new entrants can apply for a recreational marijuana license. New licenses cannot be issued before October 1st. Correct? Okay, September 30th, 2014 required vertical integration and 70/30 ends. So I think we'll have a huge shift in mergers and acquisitions, and probably one of the last shifts in mergers and acquisitions until 2016 at that time. And then we have pretty much it, I guess. So October 1st, 2014, first licenses for new entrants are issued. Independent retail marijuana cultivation facilities can open.
So I think that's important to remember too, is local governments can choose to keep vertical integration going past October 1st if they want to, and I think a couple of them are already thinking about it. I know Steamboat is, so if you're looking to relocate, it's something you might want to pay close attention to in the regulations is, are they going to require locally that you have to stay vertically integrated, because that changes the whole game.
And that came up in the spring also, so there's all kinds of that going on with them. Bringing back what they didn't get at the State House, trying to bring it back and pick it up in the municipalities.
So we've got a lot of good people representing you and representing our industry and our business, and I think we're in a good spot. I mean, I think we have a long ways to go, but I think we're there. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask anybody up here. You're more than welcome to meet with somebody afterwards or come up and ask, or even email us at cloverleafconsulting@gmail.com, and we will keep those in mind for our next panel.
And a quick comment, we won. Prohibition is over.
Yeah.
So
The law is on our side.
any way you look at this, we've made history, we've done the right thing, we stuck to our guns. I mean, I'm a young kid on the block. People have been fighting for this their whole lives. I'm only 39. And we can argue over the taxes, we can argue over local jurisdiction, we can argue all these things. But take pride in what you've done, because you guys have all pushed the ball forward. And on each of these dates, October 1st, January 1st, October 1st next year, we're all pushing the ball forward. And we're going to be able to look back at the strides we've made up to now, and let's just keep pushing it.
And not only that, there will be many states that imitate Colorado. I hope that all of them do. But no matter what, we in Washington State are the first.
Yep.
And if you look at the gambling industry, the two leaders in gambling are Las Vegas and Atlantic City. Even though you can gamble anywhere in the country pretty much these days, those two locations are still the leaders because they were first. That's where you go if you really want to get serious. Same thing. Colorado is going to be the cannabis capital of the United States forever because we're...
Robert Corey will be teaching our CLE accredited classes at Cloverleaf University as well. So if you want to learn from the best, you can definitely sign up for those classes. Do any of you have anything else that you would like to touch on last minute?
We're taking questions, there's some hands up.
Yeah, actually, I have a cute thing to talk about real quick. I just want to say that the Industrial Hemp Committee started work today, and I sat in on it, and it was actually, as Terry would like to say, it was one of those awe-inspiring moments where people were taking hemp seriously as a crop. You know, there was any kind of attempt by the AG's representative to do any kind of fear-mongering about marijuana if the THC level goes over 3%, was immediately poo-pooed by the entire people, and I just loved it, and it was great. And to see people treating this as like a serious industry without your prohibitionists and your special interests and all that stuff getting in the way was, I think it was really inspiring. So at least there's something, a little bright light in all this. So.
A lot of bright lights.
A lot of bright lights.
Sunglasses.
some glowing embers.
I would like to say, we had our first growers meeting last week, and it was wonderful, and a lot of people came out and for the first time, and we're gonna see a day when we can put those organizers in, or put those growers into regulated and make them independent contractors and let them go to work like they should. And we want to try to go for the pardon for anybody that's been convicted of marijuana-related felonies. I think next year is the year we start pushing the governor for those pardons.
And if you want to know how you can be associated with the union and get that support in your area too, you can talk to TJ as well.
No questions, same question.
Tim, go ahead.
All right, my question is, there's numbers, this is tax, and there's numbers that came out from the CSU that have absolutely nothing to do with any numbers. Numbers representative.
All right, so there was a CSU tax study that came out, and it failed. The income study, it had no representation for anything that this community has done. And in fact, the numbers that have come out here recently say $2 billion the first year in sales. Hundreds of millions of dollars of that is going to be sales tax and go back into wherever it needs to go, probably general fund. The problem is not overtaxing us. The money's there. The problem is getting your legislators to put that money where it belongs, to guide it where it belongs, not just, turn us upside down.
That's exactly right.
What's your question?
Seriously, the money is there. So the problem is getting with your legislators to put that money in the right place. And I am not going to deal with a 40% sales tax.
If you look at any of the audits
I'll answer the question now because actually, I think yesterday before, the writers of that study actually admitted their numbers were wrong, and the reason why the numbers were wrong is because they wrote the study before the final bill passed. So they were using the recommendations from the task force, which was littered with all sorts of pet projects and things that were unnecessary, blah, blah, blah. Because of some of the people that are sitting out here on stage, actually, a lot of the things they were factoring in didn't happen. That we would convince the legislature, hey, you know what? You don't need to have brand new treatment programs. You don't need to have, 5 million new treatment programs, blah, 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 blah. So what ended up happening is the people who did that study actually themselves admitted their numbers were wrong, their estimates were completely out of line, and that there's going to be significantly more revenue because those projects they were expecting to have in the bill, which made no sense, were taken out.
And it's a valid point because here's the government's logic behind these taxes, all right? We failed as the government. The government says, we failed you. We've had 3 scathing audits, Department of Revenue, MMED, Health Department, Medical Marijuana Registry, and now Denver Excise and Licensing. All 3 of them failed miserably in every single task we asked them to do. Give us more money. What job works that way? What one of us can go to one of our bosses and say, boss, I failed, double my pay? I mean, the world that these government people live in is insane. They're insane. We have to deny them more money. Don't give them more money to fail even more. It makes no sense to me.
Beyond what Rob said, I think that there's the fact that a lot of these regulators, I mean, the municipalities and the regulators on a state level are just greedy for more toys. They don't even intend to use them for what they're saying they're using them for. Denver wants those 6 vans to pick up drunks. They don't want them for marijuana, but they can't say what they want them for. They just will get them, and then when they're not using them for what they said they wanted them for, they'll use them for what they want them for. They're looking at us to pay for things. And reality is, if we're 100,000 patients, we're maybe 500,000 users total, if we factor that there's 4 recreational users for every person who got their card, which seems realistic. You can't expect 500,000 people to pay for everything that every municipality in the state wants.
And just to put some numbers on that, the last I saw, the tax revenues from medical marijuana were $200 million. So if we're talking times 4 or times 5, that's what the law school was that.
Not much me to say, I don't know.
Lots of money.
500 million, $1 million.
It's a straight man.
First off, thank you very much for coming and talking to us. My question is for recreational businesses, how is the plant count going to work?
They haven't talked about it yet even.
The legislature created kind of a catch-all for the Department of Revenue to establish how plant counts are going to be. They say, for example, you may use one of these types. What they're talking about was square footage, per light, canopy, or other.
Any other reasonable metric.
So it kind of pushes the ball over. And I gotta say, too, a little bit to the MED's credit, they've had 3 years of hard education on how this business works. And the conversations I've had with Barbara Roll and Cameron Zoll and all that, they get it. They understand it. And I feel like they're gonna do the right thing. The question is, it's always gonna come back to local because local is uneducated. So you gotta educate the local politicians on it. They might say, well, I think Terry was telling me that some were talking about weighing the plant in various stages.
That was today's meeting, yeah.
And it just shows that they don't have any understanding of how all the plants work, much less these plants.
Well, look, I mean, to give you an example of how completely uninformed local officials tend to be, I do a lot of city board lobbying. They threw this ordinance out, but they actually came with an ordinance back in February. Now, this is talking about a city that's got, 67 or more licensees for between cultivation facilities and dispensaries. And so you would think, be familiar with the current state law with the 3 classes of licenses and how many plants you can have, blah, blah, blah. So they came up with a proposal that cultivation facilities for retail marijuana should have no more than 500 plants. Now, there isn't a cultivation facility in the city right now that has that many. Everyone's got way more than that. So that's how uninformed these people are. Watch the city council members. Watch them. They don't know what they're talking about.
And kind of what happened this last legislative session is that there were a lot of topics like defining what does it mean to consume openly and publicly. And the legislature could not come up with a definition that everybody could agree on. That also would work everywhere in the state as a statewide concern. Same thing with locked and enclosed for cultivation, for home growing, is what does that mean? So what they ended up doing is leaving a lot of those decisions up to local authority. Now, it's kind of funny because local authority always, the cities and stuff always say they want a lot of control, and yet they complain when the state doesn't make the decisions that they want to, and then they actually have to do the work and do it themselves. So, but the reason that we keep talking about you have to go to local, you have to talk to your city, you have to talk to your county is because we're all running there's a whole bunch of us here that have been to multiple places across the state. And it's because the legislature took a lot of these key pieces and put them into local authority. Can you have a dual license, or do you have to be medical or recreational, and you can't be both? That's left up to local. If you are dual, can you have a virtual separation, or do you have to have a hard separation? That again is left up to local authorities. So, and then there's the taxes and all these other things. So you have to pay attention to what's going on in your own community. And honestly, all politics are local. When you hear that, it's kind of sounds kind of trite, but it's true.
When Coors has a keg limit, then we should tolerate as an industry a plant count limit. But until that happens, the intent of 64 is this is legalized, and you should grow whatever demand you need to meet from your customer base, and you know your customers better than anyone else. That's the intent of 64. So there's no more patients tied to recreational, therefore there can't be a plant count limit.
So everyone go to these meetings and advocate for that.
And they are looking at a tiered system, though, for license fees based on size.
That's a job-killing move.
I think I have an important question because I'm a patient and I feel like the best thing I can do medically for myself is to recreate. When I'm having a good time, I have no stress. I just want to know, hey man, cool, you come out of town, people are going to be coming from Amsterdam now to enjoy Denver, Colorado. And maybe they should pay the high tax. I shouldn't have to pay the tax that the recreational retail business is, even though I do agree that when I'm stress-free, I'm having a good time.
And all governments, again, will have that decision.
When I show my card, can that be the card?
Well, currently, there's no state
It depends on where you are. It's, like I said, the local jurisdictions.
Colorado, because I need my medicine.
Right, now, so some
Right
local.
now, there's no tax on it.
Yeah, now the medical will still exist, so we have Amendment 20, it's in our Constitution. We will, let me finish. In medical, the Amendment 64 specifically says that the excise tax, that none of this, on the state level, none of that applies to medical. Now
Now,
the
cities are looking at, yeah.
The issue is that there are local cities and counties that are considering a tax and applying that to medical. And there are actually a handful of towns in Colorado that actually already have a tax on medical. To get that break, you will have to shop in a medical marijuana dispensary, just like you do now, unless there are some dispensaries I've talked to that are converting over to recreational that are planning on offering specific discounts to patients. But that is a business decision left up to them, and I would be very surprised if the state mandated at any level that they did something like that for recreational, because the systems are supposed to be kept separate.
And the end game, and I don't know when we're going to get there, but the end game is you walk into one place that has everything you could want, a virtual marijuana, wonderland, and when you go to buy, you show your medical card that gets you out of the taxes, or you show your driver's license that gets you with the taxes, but it's all seamless. That's the end game.
And they're not there yet.
May I make a statement? Actually, in reality, you can't just shop. Like, hypothetically, under this new system in a dual licensed location, physical location, if you go in with your red card and you want to buy a product that's on the recreational side of the business, you have to pay those taxes despite being a patient, because the excise tax was applied during the point of sale. It doesn't go away just because you have your red card. Now, this becomes a real problem for owners of businesses, because let's say hypothetically you have 50 products that you stock, but you had a run on raspberry. So somebody comes in and they're a patient. They want raspberry, but you only have it. Now you're asking that person to pay that 40% tax.
Or you give them a discount because they're a patient.
Or you just say, hey, everyone in this industry really should not support this tax because it's one more layer of difficulty for regulators.
I need raspberry.
You do.
I want to say something here. That every patient in this state, depending on their income level, is due no taxes. All you have to do is file a state zero tax, whatever. I mean, if you're on AOD, as a veteran or whatever, you file for zero taxes and you pay no taxes.
And it's the same form where you can get your red card for free also.
That's
same
right.
Qualification process. So currently, patients are taxed at a regular tax rate. You can be exempt from that as a patient if you qualify. And
You have to
get a free
show
red card.
indigent status to qualify for that.
Hey, we're Bill's my new consultant.
You have to show a tax return.
The taxation right now is a little bit of a filibuster topic, and it isn't the dispensary also. I bud tend, and most of my patients are confused. They want to support and they want to vote. Is there anything that's proposed right now that I can share with them that would benefit and maybe create a tax ceiling for the patient side of things? Are they even throwing that on the table?
Well, different cities are.
So, are there any like lobbyists to follow, any actual trails that people can see, all of you guys, and you're found here? Is there anything that we need to be aware of that maybe we need to kick out, that we need to vote against inside or request to be?
Central Colorado, Sean can speak to this, has a pretty good, I think, get out the GOTV kind of movement, but they're very good about action alerts, especially when it comes to local governments. They did a really good groundswell when it came to the Boulder tax. I know UFCW has a really good grassroots movement too, like they have a lot of memberships. But I would say
Cannabis Patients Action Network here.
Yeah, and our drug policy has a really good one too.
But I
Sensible Colorado, you can check out we have a local action center on sensiblecolorado.org, and you can contact cities that way, and then if you get on our email list, we'll send you an alert when anything's going on in any local jurisdiction.
I think the most important thing for bud tenders to do right now is to tell patients to renew their patient cards.
Keep your red card.
That is the absolute, you must do that, because it's a small investment if everything goes right, and it'll be your only way to access your medicine if anything goes wrong. And there's no guarantee everything's going to go right. There's plenty of pitfalls ahead. If you're a bud tender, if you're a marijuana business owner, if you're a patient yourself and you talk to anybody that's a medical marijuana patient, tell them renew your patient registry.
Absolutely.
If you, my registry expires on January of next year, so I'm fine. No, renew your registry. Is that clear? Renew. It's nothing.
Thank you. It's
And
absolutely.
everybody's just assuming that recreational's coming, I don't need to renew my red card, the patient count's dropping, and everybody's plant counts are dropping, and we got a real problem coming October.
If you get double constitutional protection with a red card, so yeah.
And also right now, depending on, some law enforcement is actually indicating that you can have 6 plants for recreational and 6 plants for medical because they are separate. So I can't tell you for sure to do that. That is not my advice. I am not a lawyer, but that is what we've heard from some.
I agree. You get 6 for recreational, 6 for medical.
And then you can have, your 1 ounce recreational weed and your 2 ounces or whatever that you're allowed for medical. So keep your
That's
red
why I
card.
have 12.
I would ask, as the bud tender, I would ask your patients, do you want to pay 40% more for your marijuana? If so, vote yes on these taxes. If not, vote no.
They made a big mistake by tying those two together. If they had separated it, it might have gone somewhere, but understand that there's still a very, very large percentage of Colorado that is not for marijuana. So that's what, 46%?
Majority rules.
Right,
But how much
but they
majority
only
votes
need to get 4% on their side. And so it's a very, I'm not advocating for one or the other, I'm still thinking about it. And I love the debate I heard here tonight because I thought it was very informative. But if you are going to be against it, you need to be super, super, super loud because all they have to do is get 4% of the remaining voters over to their side.
Well, we get the votes of the people who hate taxes, all those conservative, right-wing Republicans.
I know
All of them, they're fine taxing stoners. They're fine taxing stoners.
I know
That's
a
why
lot
it passed the Colorado screens.
But the taxes
The taxes
are also the vehicle for a lot of local jurisdictions to move forward, to ensure the big picture moves forward. The taxes are
Can I interject something
Which is
here?
why, well, just real quick, I want to speak directly to Sean's point, which is also why, I don't know how this tax measure is going to go, to be honest, because, to Sean's point, and maybe somewhat to Craig's point, is that if you are opposed to marijuana and you voted no on Amendment 64, you might think, well, if I vote no on these taxes, then I can create new municipalities banning. So people say, I don't know why you voted for Amendment 64. Frankly, I don't know why people are going to vote one way or the other on the tax. So I don't know how to.
When I was on the campaign trail this fall telling people to vote no, I'm going to say, do you want a bigger government or a smaller government? You want a bigger government than tax marijuana? I think that'll work. I think we get a lot more votes against these taxes, maybe people who didn't vote for marijuana.
I'd really like to throw
see.
something out there from a business perspective. It's not just these taxes that we're going to be passing on to the consumer. There's also the packaging, the labeling, and all of the
testing,
onerous bullshit that we're going to be asked to fucking meet. So you sit here and you talk about this 40%. You're also talking about 40% on top of this extra $7 for the safety fucking package and all this other bullshit. So
40% isn't the right number.
They're not just taxing the cannabis, they're taxing everything you buy in there. So they're taxing you on that extra packaging. They're taxing you on all of the fucking bullshit that owners
More, I think
It's 25%.
More importantly, in terms of that, from the business perspective, of course, is 280E. Now, fortunately, the General Assembly did say that they're not going to continue to tax at 280E levels for the state purposes of state taxes. That passed the General Assembly this session for both medical marijuana business and for retail marijuana business. But the thing is, it's still the IRS. So if you're a business owner one of the things you're going to be factoring in is that, look, I can't deduct my rent, I can't deduct my employee salaries, blah, 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 on it goes. So I think that is probably the most important factor. So that's why, now that we got it fixed on the state level, everybody needs to be talking to a member of Congress and say, look, you need to sign on to Representative Perlmutter's bill.
That's our representative Perlmutter here in Colorado.
You need to, I mean, sorry, that's actually that's Ed Blumenauer's bill, the 280 tax bill. But Perlmutter's bill is the banking bill. But again, tomorrow, right after you're done calling your city council member, introducing yourself, call your member of Congress. Before you do that, go to thomas.gov, type in the word marijuana as a keyword, it'll show you all the bills related to marijuana, and make sure your member of Congress is signed on to all of them. And if not, find out why.
And those that are support them, tell them you'll vote for them, send them money.
Yeah. We also will be helping with fundraisers and stuff in these local communities.
You don't want to give your money to a dirty politician. Or donate to the Cannabis Patients Action Network, because we are supporting these candidates.
Yeah.
And then she's just going to give your money to a politician.
Okay, so, here's the thing. Look, I mean, all joking aside, I mean, when I first went to DC to work on Capitol Hill, I was as bright-eyed and bushy-tailed as anybody could be, and I came away just as disillusioned as anybody else could be. But the reality is the game is the game, right? So you can say politicians are bad people, you're probably right. You can say politicians are assholes, that's probably true. That a lot of them are retarded, and a lot of them are pedophiles probably. It doesn't matter. What matters is the game is the game, they hold the cards, and you need to play the game by their rules if you plan on winning. Period. That's it. So if there's a politician that's doing the right thing, you may hate giving campaign contributions, but you know what? If you give that person $10, you are now on their mailing list, you are now on their radar. They care about what you say. It is absolutely 100%, make no mistake about it, pay to play. And if you want to play, you have to pay, and that's all. I wish it wasn't that way.
You don't have to give them money.
Yeah,
That goes all the way down to your local levels.
But the reality is, look, it's all fine and good to not deal with reality. I don't want to do it either. But that's not real. That's not going to work. What works is if there's a politician that, first of all, you have to know everybody that is represents you. You need to know who they are. You need to know their name. You need to know everybody in their staff. Tomorrow, not next week, tomorrow. And if they are doing the right thing, you make sure that they know that you know. So you are calling them, you're sending them emails, you are thanking them for every vote they cast that's the right vote, you send them an email and thank them the next day. You send them checks. Doesn't have to be big, $5, $10, because you know why? Because now you're in the database. Now they know that you exist. Because if you're not, no, they don't. No, they don't. Okay, so
if you send enough emails, they know who you are.
Yeah, no, that's not true.
That's not true.
You know what? When I
make sure that you put in your email that you are a constituent, you are a voter, you live in their district, because they'll
tell me how I get 20 or 30 people from the Capitol's email every week.
I like to hand deliver my letters.
But nobody can ignore your emails. So
right, but let me give you a little reality check, Jessica. For example, you send an email this is from inside the congressional office. I know this because it used to be my job.
Yeah.
When you send an email to a member of Congress, it goes to an email address that absolutely nobody checks. That's the truth. That's the truth. That is the truth. That's it.
So we are going to have to wrap up because
but I do want to So, but before I was interrupted, because it's incredibly important. If a politician is doing the right thing in your issue, you must support them, and you have to make sure that they know you're supporting them.
Yes.
And then if they're doing the wrong thing, you have to make sure that they know you're supporting their opponent, right?
Yes.
So when you call a member of Congress, they're like, well, you're going to probably talk to the staff and say, well, we're not going to support Ed Blumenauer's bill. Okay, well then I'm sending a campaign check to your opponent right now. When you send them a campaign, send their opponent a campaign check, send an envelope to their campaign office so they know that you just sent with a copy of the check, so they know that you contributed to their opponent because they didn't support you.
Their opponent may also be a prohibitionist. That's not a good strategy.
It doesn't matter. Then you send it to their primary opponent because their primary opponent is definitely going to be a little bit more progressive than they're going to be or conservative.
But you have some people people in conservative districts who know that their opponent agrees with them, and there's no reason to listen to us. And so it's stupid to try to play a money game to send $5 to two people who are both going to fuck you in the ass.
The point is exactly right.
Right, that's why we need better primary candidates and better primary participants.
Bottom line, if people want to get reelected, so if your city officials want to be reelected, then they need to then we need to put the pressure on them. Even if we just get 5 people from your dispensary, or people to sit together in those meetings, it's still pressure, it's still making a voice, and we have to have a voice within each local municipality. It's super important right now as we're creating these new rules, and that's the bottom line, is we have to have a voice. So, you know, if you can't make those meetings, letters, things like that, but if you don't have time, you can always hire a lobbyist. I mean, these people have been going all day, and look at them still going, like this is the best people to fight for you at the bottom line. We've got the union, we've got a lot of different people here to support these businesses. So definitely find the best support system for you, and if you have any questions, you can definitely always go to our website on the Cannabis Business Association. We'll have all of that available for you as well. And all of the updates are on there too, and all the forms, for free.
If you're in Denver, talk to Robin Kanishi, Chris Herndon, they're swing votes.
While you're there, try to convince them to do clubs too, okay? And we will see you next week. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Chloe.